Next question there. And if there's one after that, we can make sure we got the microphone to you. Oh, well.
Neville Trotter, Alistair. I put my Chamber of Commerce hat on. We're very conscious of the short-term issues, but can I raise a long-term one? And that's the high-speed rail link. Your successor, Transport, is about to produce the government theory on this, thinking long-term on this. Can I stress to you the importance of it, including the North East and its network? I'm sure the Treasury is going to have an input into it. Will you bear that very strongly in mind?
Yes, I will. I think the other thing I'll bear in mind is that having been a Transport Secretary and seen what happens if you don't invest in the infrastructure for a long time, you've got to make sure that we keep our existing infrastructure maintained to a high level. The East Coast Main Line is always going to be important for connections between Newcastle on the south and beyond. So it's important that whatever we do, we don't get ourselves into a situation where everything is being absorbed into one particular project and you aren't mindful of what needs to be done there. I think the other thing that is worth bearing in mind too is that most people in this country do not travel routinely long distances. They travel comparatively short distances, and that's why you get congestion in very concentrated areas. And I think therefore we've got to ensure also that one of the things that will make the difference between people coming to the North East and not is can you get around it. So you've got to make sure you deal with the local transport infrastructure too. I think as far as high speed is concerned, the way I look at it is this. It's like so many other things. You have to test it against what happens if you don't do anything. And if we don't do something about it, the infrastructure we've got just now, railways and road, will become more and more congested. And we'll get ourselves into a situation that we've been in too often in the past where transport has just been allowed to slip by the way. So I think it is a decision that needs to be made. But I don't doubt for a moment, if we build a high-speed route, wherever the route is, it will be highly controversial, both for those people who are going to be on its route and those who aren't. But it's something that, as a country, we've got to face up to this, because I think overall, if we don't increase our rail capacity, then in years to come, we will have many reasons to regret it. But I take on board with what you make.
Hi, good morning. My name is Ian Reid from Clean Air Solutions. We provide solar PV into commercial factories, business premises. Our question is, why is there no enhanced capital allowance on solar PV when there are allowances or enhanced capital allowances for other renewable energies? And the reason for the question is that when companies invest in this technology to reduce their carbon footprint, because they are part of the CRC programme, it can mean £200,000, £300,000, £400,000, £500,000 of investment, which they are nervous about at this present time. Enhanced capital allowance would assist them in going ahead with a commitment to reduce CO2s.
Well, I suppose I better give you the answer I always give at this stage before a budget, and I'm not going to raise your hopes at all. So you're better to proceed on the basis that you may not get exactly what you want. But it's something that I always look at, and I've got to trade off the cost of a capital allowance against what I think the advantage might be in the future. And there's one or two you probably noticed. I'm not enthusiastically looking for ways of spending money at the moment, rather the opposite. Capital allowances do have a role to play. For example, I think in relation to corporation tax, many people have said to me, if there's a choice between keeping the rate as it is and keeping the allowances, they would rather that than lose some of the allowances. Equally, the annual investment allowance, which we've introduced for businesses, which I think has been helpful. I think perhaps it helps you in explaining where I'm coming from in terms of the philosophy behind it. But in relation to solar, I hear what you've got to say, but I can't say anything today about that.
We've got at front of the Journal, in front of most people, the Prime Minister saying that the Conservatives are declaring war on the North East. Now, bearing in mind that we're going to hear from Greg Clark and Simon Hughes and others this afternoon, this is your chance. What is the straight election pitch from you to the North East, do you think?
Well, I don't know, Adam. I've spoken to countless business audiences before, and I've always tried to avoid the straight party political stuff because it's a big turn-off from my view. My view is quite clear that I think having come through this massive downturn, our country as a whole now has quite a big decision to make, because whatever we decide and whatever we decide you want the government to do is going to make a difference for the next 10 or 20 years, not for the next 5. And I've always believed that government cannot stand in the shoes of an individual entrepreneur or make this, come up with the innovation and the commercial expertise that the private sector does. But I'm very clear that if government isn't standing alongside and is prepared to play its part, and playing its part means recognising that sometimes when you spend money, it actually helps an economy, and if you take money away too soon, it can actually have a disastrous consequence. I think having that partnership between public and private sector is absolutely essential. So I wasn't putting a particular political spin on it. Well, I just think I would say this. I just think my approach is the right one, particularly for an area like this, which is going through a transitional period and has been for some time. But what government does or doesn't do will be pivotal to the future of the North East in the next 20 years.
But at the same time, as you made clear, it's going to be more difficult in the Parliament that's coming, whoever is in power, to actually have money for the government to use.
Well, that's right. I mean, public spending is going to be a lot tighter, but the choices you make as to where you spend that money are going to be pretty critical. Now, for example, I think if you start letting go on education, you can do that for a year or two, but you'll pay a price for it. Similarly, Neville Trotter was asking about transport. That's important, but there's other areas where, frankly, government is either not going to be able to do things or it's going to have to put off doing things. Of course, it needs to do it more efficiently, and everybody says that. And I dare say that it will become clearer as time goes on, but it's blindingly obvious that if your spending is pretty flat, but that it will make a difference. But I do think you can manage this. This is not the first time that governments have had to cut back or they've had to restrain spending. You can do it. I think if you halve the borrowing over a 4-year period, you can manage that. My fear is if you go more steeply than that, you will end up getting into a situation, as Ken Clarke said the other day, where you start cutting things that actually make a real difference and could take you years to recover from them. So, I suppose that's if you want a difference between the parties, that's one of them.